All right. So our lesson for this afternoon is instructional design models. Wait lang for a while. Wait lang. Nawala. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. So as I have told you, our lesson for this afternoon is on instructional design models. Now, let me just give you an introduction to what instructional design model is. Say, if I will be asking you a question on how will you teach, okay, how will you start your lesson, what would be your answer there? Say, ngayon magbe-brainstorm na kayo ng mga kagrupo mo mga kagrupo mo sa teaching demonstration. And of course, the brainstorming will begin with a question on paano natin ito ituturo? Paano natin ituturo itong topic na pinili natin? Okay? So at this very moment, if you have ideas, okay, if you have ideas on how you will be able to deliver your instruction to your students, then you are already developing or you're already anchored on what we call the instructional design model. Okay? So when we talk about the instructional design model, simply ito yung proseso ng pagtuturo. Okay? Ito yung proseso ng pagtuturo. Saan ka mag-uumpisa? Pagkatapos ng unang step na ginawa mo, anong isusunod mong gagawin? Pagkatapos nun, anong gagawin mo ulit? Okay? Pagkatapos nun, ano yung gagawin mo? And then after all those processes, what will you do at the end of your lesson? Okay? So remember, people, that when we teach, especially in the basic education, or especially in the basic education, we just don't lecture to our students. There are steps, okay? There are procedures that we follow based on studies, based on scientific evidences, based on what educators think is the right way of teaching or instruction. Okay? So notice that I am emphasizing on the basic education because in higher education, iba ang modelo na ginagamit. In fact, no, meron tayong tinatawag na academic freedom sa higher education. Ang ibig sabihin ng academic freedom ay ang guro ay may karapatang piliin, okay? Meron siyang freedom to determine what to teach, ano yung ituturo niya, okay? How to teach, paano niya ituturo ito, when to teach, okay? Kailan niya ituturo yung mga bagay na gusto niyang ituro, at marami pang iba, okay? So, teachers in the higher education where you belong to, okay, have a very high degree of academic freedom as compared to the teachers in the basic education. Okay? Because teachers in the basic education are guided with curriculum guides. Okay, they are guided with curriculum guides. They are guided with many indicators of success that they need to fulfill, okay, in order to say or to determine their effectiveness and efficiency as a teacher. Okay, and those guides are actually anchored on an instructional design model. Okay? Na ito dapat yung unang gagawin ni teacher. Kaya siguro motivation muna, pagkatapos ng motivation, may presentation, and then may lesson proper, and all. Okay? Kung gumagawa na kayo ng lesson plan sa ibang mga subjects nyo, kayo ba gumagawa na ng lesson plan sa ibang subjects nyo ngayon sa early units?
Hindi pa, sir.
Hindi pa,
Hindi
sir.
pa, okay? Pero kung nakakita na kayo ng lesson plan, okay, yung lesson plan, halimbawa, yung mga detailed lesson plan, okay, nagsisimula yan sa motivation, and then presentation, and then lesson proper, and then generalization, and then application. Yung mga prosesong yun, okay, ay nakabase dun sa tinatawag nating instructional design model. Okay? So sabi ko nga kanina, hindi ibig sabihin na pag teacher ka at alam mo kung ano yung ituturo mo, magsasalita ka na lang sa harap ng mga estudyante mo. It begins with a procedure. It begins with an with an activity and then followed by another activity, and those activities are based on the instructional design model. Okay? So halimbawa, kung ngayon pa lang, okay, kung ngayon pa lang, tatanungin ko na kayo, paano mo ituturo yung topic na nasa isip mo? Ano ngayon yung gagawin mo? Ano yung nasa iniisip mong gagawin? So, let me ask someone from the class. Let me ask Emmy. Emmy, are you here? Emmy? I'm not sure if you're here or you're just choosing not to answer my question. What about Aiza? Aiza?
Sir,
Aiza?
dapat
Yeah,
alam
ito
mo
muna, ano yung topic na nasa isip mo ngayon? Na iniisip mong ituturo mo?
biology, sir.
Anong topic sa biology?
Cell, sir.
Cell, parts of
Ay.
the cell, kunwari.
Yes po.
Okay, now, how will you start your lesson on the parts of the cell? How? How will you start your lesson?
Sir, yung magpapakita po ng example kasi hindi po nakikita sa mata.
So, magpapakita ka ng example. Okay, ng cell, ng picture, kunwari, ng drawing.
Yes, sir.
Sige, okay. So, yun yung una niyang gagawin. And pagkatapos na, anong gagawin mo? Hello? O, ayan. Okay? So, yung mga tanong na tinatanong ko na ngayon, okay, yun dapat yung iniisip nyo na sa inyong lesson plan. Okay, sa inyong teaching demonstration. Paano mo sisimulan ang pagtuturo mo? Okay, how will you start and how will you present the lesson and then how will you end the lesson? Okay? Kaya ito yung topic natin before lesson planning because you need to understand how instruction happens, okay, inside the classroom. Okay? So let's formally define instructional design model. So when we talk about instructional design, in general, educators agree that instructional design in the perspective of EdTech can be defined as the creation of instructional materials, modules, or lessons. Okay, according to Gredler in 2001, instructional design or ID is the development of instruction for specified goals and objectives in which the organized sequential selection of components is made on the basis of information, data, and theoretical principles at every stage, and the product is tested in real-world situations both during development and at the end of the development process. Okay? So, Redler emphasized two elements of the instructional design. What are these? Sabi niya dito, no? The organized sequential selection of components. Okay, the organized sequential selection of components. And number two, the product is tested in real-world situations, both during development and at the end of the development process. Okay, so if we will summarize what Gredler mentioned here in his definition of instructional design, okay, sabi niya dito, okay, instructional design is both a process and a product. Okay? It's both a process and a product. First, yung first definition niya that it is an organized sequential selection of components that pertains to the process. Ano ba yung sequence ng pagtuturo mo? Saan ka magsisimula hanggang saan ka mag-end? Pero dapat itong proseso na ginawa mo, itong proseso na pinili mo sa pagtuturo, this must be based on an information. This must be based on a scientific evidence. This must be based on a theoretical principle. Okay? So katulad ng sinabi ni Aiza kanina, anong teorya ang magsusuporta? So sinabi niya na sisimulan niya ang pagtuturo niya sa pagpapakita ng isang halimbawa ng isang cell. Okay? Isang halimbawa ng cell. Sabi niya, magpapakita daw siya ng picture o ng drawing ng cell sa kanyang mga estudyante. So, meron bang basehan? Meron bang theoretical basis itong pagpapakita niya ng cell sa kanyang mga estudyante? Meron. Kasi sabi nga niya, dahil yung marami sa kanila ay hindi pa nakakita ng cell. Okay, hindi pa nakakita ng cell. So, magre-present siya ng stimulus ngayon sa mga bata. Magpe-present siya ng isang halimbawa o isang drawing ng cell in order for them to accommodate an information. Okay? And if you can remember, those are the principles we studied in the theory of behaviorism and cognitivism. Okay? So, tama, may basehan yung gagawin ni Aiza sa pagtuturo niya ng cell. Okay? So, yun yung proseso na gagawin mo, okay? Pero, okay, itong proseso na ito ay dapat mayroong basehan kung bakit ito ang gagawin mo. Pangalawa, yung process na ginawa mo yan, the whole process, the entirety of the teaching process is already the product. And if you found out that strategy, okay, or that process of teaching the parts of the cell is effective, then you already has a development, okay, you already developed a process of effectively teaching the parts of the cell. So that is what Gredler meant about what instructional design is. Okay, it's both a process and it is a product. But take note, okay, take note that all of those processes must be anchored on your goals and objectives. Okay, must be anchored on your goals and objectives. You don't base, okay, you don't base the design of instruction on the subject matter or the topic, but you have to go back to your objective. You have to go back to your goals for that particular day or for that particular quarter before you can design your instruction. Okay, before you can design your instruction. And I hope that you are learning writing cognitive objectives. Huh? Do you guys know how to write cognitive objectives already? Is that part of your lesson in your other subjects? Writing objectives? Na-touch na ba yun? Hello? Yes,
I
sabi
think
ni Aiza na-touch na nila. Yes, Miles.
I think yes sir sa assessment since
Oo. So kung ganon, I suppose you already know how to write in objectives. At yun yung ilalagay nyo rin sa inyong lesson plan, ha? Yung mga objectives na yun. So you base now the selection of your instructional material, the process of teaching, the assessment method that you will implement in your classroom on the objectives of the lesson. Okay? So that is a general description of what instructional design is. Okay? Now, there is a process that all models of instructional design follow, and we call that the ADDIE model. Okay? The ADDIE process, I should say. Okay? There is a contention that is ADDIE a process or a model? Okay? Is ADDIE a process or a model? You have to take note that there is a difference between a process and a model. Anong pagkakaiba nito? Now, for example, a process is defined as a series of steps necessary to reach an end result, while a model is defined as a specific instance of a process that can be imitated or emulated. Kaya nga siya tinawag na model. Okay? But ADDIE, okay, ADDIE people is not a model, but it is more of a process. Even the very author or the very developer of the ADDIE, okay, describe that ADDIE is not a model, but it is a process. Okay, so in our understanding of the instructional design models, we have to enlighten ourselves that ADDIE is not entirely different to the instructional design models that we will be discussing in this unit. Instead, we look at ADDIE as the overarching paradigm or framework by which we can explain individual models. Okay, so ang pagkakaiba ng proseso at modelo, ang proseso is a general concept. Okay, it's a general concept. While a model, okay, is a part and parcel of that process that someone can emulate or someone can imitate. Okay? So ADI is serving as the overarching model. Okay, it's the overarching idea of the different instructional design models we will be looking into. Okay, in this particular lesson. Okay, so if it will be asked to you if ADI is a process or a model, the answer to that is ADI is more of a process rather than a model. Okay, so what is the ADI process? Why is it called ADI? ADI is actually an acronym of the 5 steps or procedures in the ADI process. What is this? So we start with A, which is analyze, and then design, and then develop, and then implement, and then we evaluate. Okay? So the ADI process starts with analysis. And when we talk about analysis, you have to identify the probable causes for a performance gap. Okay, the probable causes for a performance gap, followed by design, which is verifying the desired performances and appropriate testing methods, then develop, generate, and validate the learning resources, then implement, prepare the learning environment, and engage the students, and then evaluate, assess the quality of the instructional products and processes both before and after the implementation. Okay? So the ADI process just simply tells us, okay, kung ano yung gagawin natin when we plan to develop a instructional material or a lesson, for example. But in our case, okay, we will be thinking about the development of instructional materials. So in the analysis stage or analysis stage, okay, say you want to develop a book or you want to develop a worksheet or you want to develop an infographic or whatever instructional material that is. But that material should not be developed just because you want to develop it. Just because you want it to be materialized na minsan na naginip ka na ito yung material na gagawin mo sa classroom. No, that should not be the case, okay? Because when we develop instructional materials that we can use in our classrooms, there must be a certain basis to that. Okay? Meron bang nangyaring pagkahirapan o difficulty yung mga estudyante mo sa pagkatuto ng isang konsepto and that's why you are developing this instructional material? Okay? Kaya ba ganito yung iyong PowerPoint? Kaya ba ganito yung iyong visual aid? Ay dahil may mga instances na itong mga estudyante mo ay nahihirapang matuto and that's why you're developing a material in order to solve their problem. So in other words, people, when we talk about the analysis stage or the analyze stage of the ADI process, you are thinking from the lens of the problem and how will you be able to solve that problem. So you are identifying a problem there. Okay? So you are identifying the problem in the teaching and learning process. And based on that problem, you now design the appropriate intervention, okay, using your instructional material. Okay, but before I proceed with the next part of the lesson, I would like to emphasize to everybody that when we talk about an instructional material, IM, okay, baka ang nasa isip nyo ay yung mga ginagamit lang sa loob ng classroom na pinopost ni teacher sa blackboard, okay? Na gagawa siya ng Manila paper o kaya ng mga cutouts ng pictures or ng photographs or whatever. Yes, those are IMs. The PowerPoints are IMs. The diagrams and drawings are IMs. The visual aids are IMs. But IMs pertain as well to your worksheets. Okay? Gumamit ka ba ng activity sheets? Gumamit ka ba ng libro? Okay? Gumamit ka ba ng work text or ng textbook, for example? Okay? Ano pa? Modules. Okay? What else? Games. Okay? Learning experiences in the classroom. Yung mga yan ay kasama dun sa mga tinatawag nating instructional material. So it's anything, okay? It's anything that you use for your instruction, okay? Is an instructional material. So when you are able to analyze and identify the gap or the problem, and you are now on the stage of thinking, ano kayang gagawin ko in order to solve this learning gap? Then you are already on the design stage. Okay, you are already on the design stage. And when you're done designing kung ano yung gagawin mo, then syempre, gagawin mo na siya. You now develop. When you now develop it, you now make the material. You generate and validate the learning resources. And when you already have those in your hands, the next thing to do is to implement them. Gamitin mo na sa classroom. You now prepare the learning environment and engage the students using the material that you develop. But that does not end there. Pag nagamit mo na, itanong mo sa sarili mo, was I able to fill the gap? Was I able to solve the problem of teaching and learning? When you do that, okay, and when you are trying to answer that question, you are already on the evaluate stage. So evaluate people is assessing the quality of the instructional products and processes both before and after the implementation. Okay? So halimbawa, let's use a typical example. Gumamit ka ng PowerPoint, for example. O kasi nga, yung mga bata, hindi engaged sa lesson. Kasi ang ginagamit mo, Manila paper lang and all. Tapos yung mga nasa loob, nasa likod ng classroom, ay hindi na nakikita yung Manila paper na ginagamit mo. So you decided to use a PowerPoint. O you decided to use a PowerPoint. So what is that? What did you do when you're trying to think about ano kaya gagawin ko para ma-solve ko tong problema na ito? You are on the analysis stage. And when you're trying to think about, kaya gagawa ko ng PowerPoint. At saka dapat yung PowerPoint ko, ganito ang itsura. Dapat malalaki yung font kasi nga may mga estudyante hindi nakakakita sa likod. You are already on the design stage. And when you are on the actual process of doing the PowerPoint presentation, you are on the develop stage. And when you're done with it and you use it in your class, you are in the implement stage. And then pagdating ng evaluation, nagpa-quiz ka, tapos yung mga estudyante mo matataas ang score. At nung nagtanong ka sa kanila kung anong understanding nila sa lesson, yung mga tao na nasa likod, alam nila kung ano yung sagot. Ibig sabihin, nakikita nila ngayon kung ano yung PowerPoint mo. And they are not, they do not have a hard time anymore looking at your instructional material. So in that way, were you able to fill the gap? Were you able to solve the problem using your instructional material? In that example, you were able to do so. Okay? So, yun yung ADI process na sinasabi natin. Okay? So, hindi tayo nag-iisip ng instructional material base sa kung anong gusto lang natin bilang guro. But we think about what our learners need. Okay? What do our learners need? Okay? Ano yung problema sa loob ng classroom na kailangan nating solusyonan gamit yung mga instructional material natin. Okay? So any question to that? So sa inyong teaching demonstration, aside from I will be observing kung paano ka magturo, titingnan ko din yung mga instructional material na ginawa mo. Okay? And I will be asking you, bakit ito ang IM? Bakit ganyan yung design niya? Bakit ganito yung kulay niya? Bakit ganito yung font na ginamit mo? Okay? Bakit ganito yung ginamit yung pinili mong IM? Ano problema sa classroom na gusto mong isolve? So it's not only because I want it. Kasi maganda sir, kasi ganito eh. Pero bakit yan? Okay, bakit? Anong gap ang finifill mo? Alright? Okay. So look at these specific examples in the ADI process, no? So analysis, sabi dito, sample task needs assessment. Yung sinasabi ko kanina, you can ask your students, what do they need? Okay, problem identification, task analysis. So sample outputs of this are learner's profile. Nakita mo na most of your students are visual learners. So anong gagamitin mo mga materials ngayon? Should you be using audio materials? Of course, you should use visual materials because they are visual learners. Okay? On the design part or process, okay? It's a process of specifying how is this to be learned. So you are now writing your objectives, develop the test items, plan instructions. So planning stage tong mga ito. Analysis and design is on the planning stage. Okay, planning stage yan. And then pagdating mo sa development, and this is the action stage. Okay, yung development and implementation. This is the action stage because you're acting on it already. You're acting on based on your design, based on your analysis. Okay? So work with producers, develop workbook. So yan yung mga sample outputs mo. Meron ka ng script, may exercises ka na, meron ka ng storyboard and all, okay? And then in the implementation, you are now using it, okay? You are trying it out, okay? So while you are trying it out, then you can elicit comments, data from your students. And finally, in the evaluation stage, that's the evaluation stage, namesake pa rin niya, the process of determining the adequacy of the instruction. So you can record time data, interpret the test results, survey graduates, revise activities. And now, based on those tasks, you can now make recommendations of your instructional materials, how to better improve it, project report, and then revise the prototype. So sa inyong demonstration, hindi tayo makakarating dun sa may revision ka na dun sa IM mo. Hanggang implementation lang tayo. Although, dun sa evaluation na gagawin ninyo, I will be asking you kung anong, based on your experience at sa experience ng mga estudyante mo, anong pwede nyong gawin pa para ma-improve yung inyong instructional material and of course, your instructional design. Okay, babaguhin mo ba yung kulay? Babaguhin mo ba yung strategy na ginawa mo? What could you do to better improve your teaching? Okay? So that is the ADDIE process. Okay? So take note, ADDIE is not a model, but it is more of a process. Okay? Excuse me lang kung wala ako ng water. Okay, do you have questions? So when you think about your lesson plan, you think about these processes. Okay, you think about these processes. So not only when you think about how you will teach it, but ano yung material na gagamitin mo, you think about these processes as well. All right. Now, let's now proceed to different instructional design models. So ito na yung mga models natin, ha? So sabi ko nga kanina, the models are based on the ADDIE process. You can actually trace back the steps of the different models we'll be talking about later to the ADDIE process. Okay? So first on the list is the Gagne. We pronounce it as the Gagne, the Gagne, ha? Gagne's 9 events of instruction. So in Gagne's 9 events of instruction, from the name of the model itself, there are 9 events, or there are 9 events or steps in instruction. Okay. Robert Gagne in 1965 proposed a series of events that follow a systematic instructional design process that share the behaviorist approach to learning, okay, with a focus on the outcomes or behaviors of instruction or training. As all that can be, Gagne's 9 events of instruction are visibly connected with Bloom's revised taxonomy, which you have learned from your previous courses. Okay, remember the Bloom's taxonomy, yung cognitive domain natin? Diba? Knowledge and then application, analysis, synthesis, evaluation, application, synthesis, and evaluation. So the 9 events of instruction of Gagne starts with gaining attention. Okay, ayan siya. Nakikita niyo ba yung screen? Nakikita niyo ba yung picture
Yes,
sa
sir.
cellphone niyo?
Yes, sir.
Ayan. So it starts with gaining attention. After that, you're informing the learners of the objectives, and then prior learning, then present content, then provide guidance, and then practice, then provide feedback, then assess performance, and then enhance retention and transfer to the job. So anong ibig sabihin nito? Pag nagturo tayo, okay, importante na yung mga bata na ay may attention towards you. Their attention is on you. Okay? Di ba? Sabi nga natin nung una, there's nothing that goes through the senses there's nothing that goes to the mind without passing through the senses. Anong ibig sabihin ng sinasabi ko? Ang ibig sabihin nun, kung gusto mo na may maipasok sa utak ng mga estudyante natin, buksan mo yung mga senses nila. At dapat yung mga senses nila ay nakatuon sa'yo bilang guro. Okay? Hindi yung nakabukas yung mata nila, pero sa iba sila tumitingin. O kaya, nakabukas yung tenga nila, nakikinig sila, pero sa iba sila nakikinig, hindi sa'yo. So, ang unang mong gagawin, according to Gagne, is to gain the attention of your students. And that is how we can say that it is a very behavioristic approach. Diba? Stimulus response. Remember our study of behaviorism is SR, stimulus response. You have to gain, okay? For you to be able to get a response, you have to present a stimulus. Okay? So you have to gain the attention of your students. Teachers do that, di ba? Every time they would say, good morning, class, and then everybody will be sitting down, okay, and then they get a little noisy, then the teacher would say, keep quiet, okay? Attention please, attention. O kaya, itatap niya yung table, o itatap niya kung ano man ang pwede niyang itap, yung mga ganun bagay. You want to gain attention. Okay? After that step, you now inform your learners of the objectives. Ito hindi masyadong ginagawa ni teacher. Dapat alam ng mga bata kung anong gagawin nila. Okay? Alam ng mga bata kung anong ine-expect mo na magagawa nila sa araw na yon. Okay? Will they be dancing? Will they be singing? Okay? So, it's not really like hindi ka magja-jump dun sa today, our lesson is ganito, ganyan. Okay? Hindi. You don't do that. According to Gagne. Although some teachers do that, many teachers do that. But according to Gagne, before presenting your lesson, you must inform your learners of the objectives. Because take note, the objectives are meant for the learners to achieve, and they are not meant for the teachers to do. Okay? It is meant for the learners to achieve. You must inform them kung ano yung objectives nila. Okay? Then you check prior learning. That's the next step. What do they do? What do they already know? What do they already know about the lesson? Okay? This could be a review of the previous lesson, or maybe a trigger question of their schema. Okay? A trigger question of their schema. Okay? So that's what we mean by prior learning. And then when you're done with that, you now present the content. Okay, you now present the content of the lesson. Ituro mo na sa kanila kung ano yung lesson. And then you now provide guidance, okay, practice, and then provide feedback. So ginawa ng mga bata, it's not enough na nagawa nila, but you have to provide feedback to what they have done. And then assess performance through evaluation tools. And then after that, they will be able to enhance retention and transfer to the child. Okay, that's what we meant by Gagne's 9 events of instruction. So halimbawa, ang lesson natin ay mathematics. Okay, ang lesson ay mathematics. At ang topic ay Pythagorean theorem. Okay, Pythagorean theorem. So una, syempre, you gain attention from your learners. Okay, class, listen now. We'll be starting our lesson. And then everybody is in you, or their attention is towards you. You now start presenting to them the learner, the objectives for today. Okay, once done with that, you ask them, all right, so yesterday, we talked about what? Oh, you ask your students about what they learned from yesterday's lesson. Okay, we talked about the parts of a triangle. Okay, and there are many types of triangle, right? What is the triangle that has a 90-degree angle? O, sasabihin nila, right triangle, sir. Oh. After that, you now present to them a problem, okay? You know, one day, okay, it's your strategy now. Doon na papasok yung strategy mo. Pag natapos mo ng ma-ignite o ma-trigger yung mga schema o yung prior knowledge yung mga estudyante mo, gumawa ka na ng sitwasyon ng transition dun sa content mo mismo. Okay, dun sa content mo mismo. So, halimbawa, we talk about the Pythagorean theorem. Let's say, you know, one day, okay, there is this individual, or there is this student who is drawing a triangle. Okay, drawing a triangle, a right triangle to be specific, and he has a hard time, okay, computing for the longest side in the triangle. And you know what? There's a solution for that. And that is what we call the Pythagorean relation or the Pythagorean theorem. Mga ganon. Okay, bahala ka na kung paano mo pagtatagpiin yung mga istorya na yan. Okay? So take note na itong mga proseso na to, there must be transition. Okay? You have to smoothly transition from one step to another. Okay? So when you're done presenting the content at kung paano nga ba solve ang gamitin ng Pythagorean theorem, okay, magbigay ka ng seat work sa mga bata. Or board work muna. Example, ito. So you're providing guidance. Okay, providing guidance. Hindi pa to recorded, ha? So, i-guide mo sila kung paano mag-solve ng problem. Pagkatapos nun, sila na ang magsasolve ng problem. Magpa-practice sila by their own. But you have to check their outputs. And you have to give feedback to their outputs. Okay? Once you're done with that, okay, then you can now assess their performance through a test or a quiz. Okay? Kaya nga, di ba, sa lesson planning o sa mga klase nyo, madalas, ang pinakahuling ginagawa ni teacher is assessing the performance. And once done, okay, you can now reinforce with some more activities in order for your students to enhance the retention and they could already apply the concept they have learned to a new lesson. Yun yung tinatawag na transfer to the job. In the context of education, you're now transferring the learned concept to a new concept. So, halimbawa, gagamitin nila yung Pythagorean theorem na yun sa lesson nila on trigonometric functions o yung mga real-life world problems. Okay? So, that's how Garnier designed instruction based on the 9 events of instruction. Okay? Do you have questions? So, sa inyong lesson planning, sa inyong teaching demonstration, dapat makita ko itong mga elemento na to. Okay, is the teacher gaining attention? Did he or she inform the learners of the objectives? Mga ganun. Okay? So, in the 9 events of instruction by Garnier, meron siyang provide na guidelines, okay, in the selection of appropriate media. Okay, yung mga instructional material na gagamitin nyo, Garnier provided anong tawag dito? Guide, okay, on what to use, okay, as a instructional media. So, if your learning outcome is on intellectual skills, okay, huwag kang gagamit ng mga material na hindi interactive. Okay? Dapat nagbibigay ng feedback yung material na yun sa kanila if you want to develop intellectual skills of learners. Okay? So, halimbawa nito, huwag kang gumamit ng YouTube video. Kasi nga, hindi naman nagbibigay ng feedback yun eh. Hindi nang kaka-interact ang mga estudyante doon kung intellectual skills ang pinag-uusapan. Kung cognitive strategies naman, yun, wag din gumamit ng interactive, but you have to have feedback, okay? Parehas sa intellectual and cognitive. So verbal information, if you want to develop or to transfer verbal information to your students, then exclude only real equipment or simulator with no verbal accompaniments. Don't use models, don't use pictures or maps or whatever because they don't give verbal information to students. Instead, you use materials that can relate verbal messages to your students. Okay? Motor skills, exclude media having no provision for learner response and feedback, and select media making possible direct practice of skill with informative feedback. And lastly, attitudes, exclude only real equipment or simulator with no verbal accompaniments, and select media able to present realistic picture of human model like computer simulation. So role plays can also develop attitudes, dramatize experiences, yung mga yan. Those are what you can use in developing the attitudes of your students. All right? So that is Garnier's 9 events. Okay, any question? None. Now, aside from the Garnier's model, Aiza, did you unmute yourself? Do you have a question?
No, sir.
No. Okay, aside from that, we also have the Assure model. Okay, so the Assure model is also an acronym. Okay, So ASSURE is an acronym for the 6 classroom procedures with the aim of helping teachers make informed selection and use of educational technology. So according to the ASSURE model, it means A is analyze, S is state objectives, another S is select methods or media and materials, and then U is utilize media and materials, R require learner participation, and E evaluate and revise. And some educators observe that the ASSURE model is a derivative of the Gagne's 9 events of instruction. So parang binase lang daw yung ASSURE model sa Gagne's 9 events. So it's like a summary of the Gagne's 9 events. Although the ASSURE model is nearer to the ADDIE model than the Gagne's 9 events. Okay? If you look at it, the ASSURE is very similar to the ADDIE process, I should say. So again, what's the ASSURE model? A is analysis of learners and then stating the objectives, then select methods, materials mo, utilize media, gamitin mo na, yung implement stage sa ADDIE, require learner participation, and then evaluate and revise. Now let's look at examples of the ADDIE model. Okay, look at this. Okay, ano ang ginagawa ni teacher in the ADDIE, ASSURE, I should say, in the ASSURE model? So when you analyze your learners, okay, you look into the grade, the age, the ethnic group, the sex, or any other characteristics of the learners, and specific entry competencies like what do they already know, yung prior knowledge nila, yung skills nila, their attitudes, ano yung learning styles nila. Ang ibig sabihin lang nito is kilalanin mo kung sino yung mga learners mo so that you could design an effective instruction. Okay? So halimbawa, most of your students cannot speak good English. If your students are mostly indigenous students, they are coming from indigenous groups, then they cannot speak good English. So should you continue delivering your instruction in English? Should you use materials that are in English? Okay, so it would not make sense if you use those kind of materials because after all, your learners have difficulty understanding English. Okay, after doing that, after knowing who your learners are, you now state your objectives or the learning outcomes. You now identify ano ang learning outcomes for this particular lesson. You could have a cognitive outcome, you could have an affective outcome, or a psychomotor outcome. And based on your outcomes, you now select, okay? You now select or modify the instructional materials, media, or methods. Okay? So anong halimbawa ng instructional method natin? Yan, magle-lecture ka ba? Magpapa-group work ka ba? Magpapa-field trip ka ba? Yung materials mo naman, anong gagamitin mong material sa pagtuturo? Gagamit ka ba ng visual aid? Gagamit ka ba ng video? Gagamit ka ba ng games? Magpapa-roleplay ka ba? Anong gagawin mo? Okay, anong mga materials ang gagamitin mo? And take note, our basis of the selection or modifying of instructional materials are our objectives. Okay, are our objectives. If one of your objectives is the student should be able to perform Lakota Kagayana, then what material should you use? Should you be using a what? Should you be using a drawing or a worksheet? Would that make them dance the steps of Lakota Kagayana? Mga ganun bagay. So the basis of our materials are our objectives. Once you have selected the instructional materials, then you now utilize the media and materials. Ito na yung sinasabi natin na implement dun sa ADDIE process. Gamitin mo na. Okay? And take note that when you utilize the media and the materials, you have to preview it first. Ibig sabihin, kailangan nagamit mo muna, na-dry run mo muna siya. Okay? Gamit ka ng video. Pagdating dun sa classroom, hindi naman pala nagpa-play yung video mo. So, kailangan na i-check mo muna, na test mo muna kung gumagana ba yung mga materials na gagamitin mo. Okay? Because don't assume that the technology will always work and be ready with alternative plans. Kung meron kang plan A, dapat din meron kang plan B. Okay? Meron kang plan B. So after utilizing the media and materials, you now require learners' participation. So in this case, you can use strategies to get all students actively and individually involved in the lesson, incorporate questions and answers, make sure that all students have the opportunity to engage in learning activities, and provide opportunities to manipulate the information and allow time for practice during the demonstration of the skill. Well, this is the part where Gagne's practice and feedback. Okay? So, pinapractice na ng mga estudyante kung ano yung content ng lesson mo, ginagawa nila, nagpa-problem solving sila. So long as the students are participating in your class. Okay? So take note ha, there are materials that does not require learners' participation, and there are also materials that require learners' participation. So for example, if you're using a textbook, the learners will just read it. Okay, they will just read it, and there's no feedback from the textbook. Okay, so may mga materials tayo that does not present interaction or interactive experiences to our learners, and there are also materials that have interactive elements, okay, to our learners. And lastly, ito din parehas din yung sa evaluate ni Adi, yung evaluate and revise. So pag naituro mo na, nagamit mo na yung materials mo at nakita mo na maganda yung resulta ng assessment mo, di mahusay yung pagkagawa mo ng material. Pero pag hindi, ano pang gagawin mo to better improve the instructional material? Okay? So you can see that the ADDIE process is very similar to the ADDIE Assure model of instructional design. Okay? Now, the last instructional design that we will be talking about is the Merrill's first principle of instruction. So Merrill 2002 suggests that the most effective learning environments are those that are problem-based and involve the learner in 4 distinct phases of instruction that are necessary for instruction to be most effective. Together with the problem itself, he refers to these 5 phases as first principles of instruction. Now, kahit first yung pangalan ng principle of instruction niya, 5 yan. Okay, 5. So, hindi lang isa. For a while. Sorry. Okay. So, according to Merrill, ito yan. Kita nyo ba? This one. So those are the principles of instruction according to Merrill. Okay, integration, activation, demonstration, and application. All of this revolve around the problem. That is why we talked about. Merrill is presenting to us that the best effective teaching approach is problem-based learning. So revolving around the problem is integration principle, activation principle, application principle, and demonstration principle. So what is the problem? Okay, so learners engage in solving real life problems. So yung problem natin. So task-centered is problem-centered. And then when we talk about activation, existing knowledge is activated as a foundation for new knowledge. So schema, prior knowledge again. So natatandaan nyo, sa Gagne's 9 events, meron ulit yun, yung prior learning. So activation stage yun or activation principle yun. Now, when we talk about demonstration, the new knowledge is demonstrated to the learner. You are presenting the new knowledge to the learner. Application is the learner now applies the new knowledge, and integration is new knowledge is integrated in the learner's world. So you are already transferring the knowledge to the job. Okay? So kung natatandaan natin yung Gagne's 9 events, papasok yung integration dito sa transfer to the job. Okay? Ayan. So that's according to Merrill. So ulitin natin ha. It's the problem at the center, and it begins with activating the prior knowledge, and then demonstration is learning the content of the problem. And then finally, applying is the new knowledge is being applied by the learner, and then to actual real world problems, to actual real life experience, you are using that knowledge, we call that integration. Okay? So, for example, ito yung ginagawa ni learner on those particular principle of learning according to Merrill. Pag sinabi natin problem-centered or activation principle, okay, directed to recall, relate, or apply knowledge from relevant past experiences. Okay, from the word activation or prior learning. And then demonstration learning is shown rather than told. Demonstration is consistent with the learning goal. Learner is shown multiple representations. Learner is directed to explicitly compare alternative presentations. Application principle naman, learner is required to use or her own new knowledge to solve problems. Problem-solving activities consistent with the learning goal. Learner is shown how to detect and correct errors, while in the integration principle, demonstrate his or her new knowledge or skill, reflect on, discuss, and defend his or her knowledge, create, invent, and explore new and personal ways to use his or her new knowledge. So, halimbawa, kung ikaw ay nagtuturo ng science, o ng English, I should say, and you are teaching them essay writing, for example, composition, grammar and composition ang inyong lesson. Okay? So, you may present to them a example of composition of an essay. And based on that essay, halimbawa, i-present mo lang kunwari title ng essay. What do they know? What do they infer? Ano yung inference from the title? So in that case, you are activating what they already know. Say for example, if the title of the essay is the messages from Tawi-Tawi, halimbawa. Okay, a letter from Tawi-Tawi. That's the essay. Letters from Tawi-Tawi. And they would not know about what that essay is, but they know something about Tawi-Tawi. They know something about letters. So what could it have been? Okay, what could be the essay all about? Okay, so you are now activating what they already know. Okay, based on their past experiences. And then when you're now presenting to them what the essay is, that's the demonstration principle. Because you are now presenting to them the new knowledge. Okay, the new knowledge. Okay, and take note that in that case, sabi ni Merrill, learner is shown rather than told. Okay, so hindi ikaw ang magbabasa, but let them read what is the essay. Okay, in the application principle now, okay, based on what they have read, ano pwede nilang gawin? Okay, ano pwede nilang gawin? Pwede gumawa sila ng sulat, pabalik dun sa nagsulat ng letters from Tawi-Tawi. Diba? So halimbawa, the letters from Tawi-Tawi is addressed to someone. And think about, kunwari ikaw ang sinulatan din. Ano ang ibibigay mo? Ano ang isusulat mo pabalik sa nagsulat ng letter na yan? Okay, so they are now understanding the meat of the letter, and now they're thinking about what could I write back to the sender of this letter. Okay, and then the integration principle now is applying what they know or what they already know, okay, yung new knowledge in their real world problem, in their real life experiences. So you can give an activity to them like, if you will be writing someone a letter, what would be it? Based on your own life, based on what you already experience in life. Okay? So yun yung kung paano mo isosolve, kung paano mo susundan yung principles of instruction ni Merrill. Okay? So that's you have to choose a problem, and then the activation principle, demonstration, application, and then integration principle. Okay? So if you can notice, all these models, okay, yung Merrill's 5 principles, first principles, and then we have the Assure model, and then we have the Gagne's 9 events of instruction. All these can be traced back to the ADDIE process, okay? And when you now design your instruction or your lesson plan, you should select, okay, ito you should select anong model ang gagamitin ko. Should I use Gagne's 9 events? Should I use the Assure model, or should I use Merrill's first principles of instruction? So pag kayo ay nag-demo na, at pagkatapos ng demonstration nyo at nakita ko na natapos yun na, itatanong ko sa inyo, ano ang instructional design model na ginamit mo sa iyong lesson? Okay? So yun yung dapat masagot nyo pagdating ng teaching demonstration ninyo. Okay? Any question?
Sir, nasa chat box po.
Okay. Ito. So, sabi ni Miles, sa higher education, sir, Mahirap bang mag-gain ng attention or depende sa strategy ni Prof? In fact, in higher education, it is expected that the learners the learners are attending to you already. In fact, the teacher will not, do you listen to me? Whatever you do there, kung tatanungin mo yung mga teachers sa higher ed, they go and enter the class. Whether you listen or not, bahala ka sa buhay mo. As long as I'm doing my job here, then that would be fine. Diba? Kasi, halimbawa, when I was in college, sometimes I don't listen to my teachers. I really don't listen to my teachers because I have read the lesson in advance. So, what's for to listen to the teacher? Pero, yun nga, ang point dun is, for higher education, the teacher assumes that the learners are attending to them. Whether they are listening or not, or whatever that is, it's you have the autonomy of your own learning. Kung hindi ka man nakinig, pero nagbasa ka naman, as long as you are acing your exams, mataas ang mga resulta ng exams mo, may requirements ka, I think that would just be fine. Okay? That would do for your performance in the class. So, for me, may mga teachers kasi sa college na mukhang teachers pa rin ng high school eh. I don't know. No offense, no offense. Pero there are teachers in college that is behaving like a teacher in college, in high school, na kailangan niya pa rin ng attention ng mga estudyante niya and all. I believe, no, if the teacher is good, kasi higher education learners or higher college learners have this maturity already eh. Okay? I assume, and I have the presumption that they are mature learners already. That they can be responsible of their own learning. Ibig sabihin nun, pagpasok nila ng classroom, they would not be so clueless about what to do. They already know what will they do inside the classroom. Okay? And that is, of course, to attend to their teacher, attend to their lessons, and, listen to the teacher when he or she is discussing, and do activities as the teachers are giving them. Okay? That's what the teachers are requesting them to do. Ganon. So, nakadepende sa strategy ni Prof? I think it's a matter of matured learners as well as matured teachers. Do you get what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sa higher ed yan. Pero pagdating sa basic ed, syempre, hindi. It's always a teacher factor. It's always a teacher factor. Lalo na sa graduate school. Sa graduate school, alangan naman, sasabihin mo pa sa mga estudyante mo na, okay class, good morning, please listen to me. No, hindi na.
Paano pag sa high school naman, sir, may papansin kang estudyante sa loob ng classroom? Anong dapat
Sabi ko
approach?
nga, that's a teacher factor in basic ed. It's always a teacher. You have to always gain attention from your students. And you have to always develop a strategy to gain attention from your students. And usually, nag-a-apply din yun na kung magaling si teacher, if the teacher is not demanding respect, but the respect begets from, or the respect emanates from the way the teacher teach. Na alam ng mga bata na marunong talaga magturo yung teacher and they cannot mess up with the teacher. I think yun yung isang factor kung paano mag-gain ng attention sa mga estudyante. Pero kung yung teacher na yun very clumsy, at saka very fickle-minded sa classroom management, hindi mo mahihirapan siyang i-gain yung attention ng mga estudyante niya. Anong ibig sabihin ko sa classroom management? Halimbawa, ngayon, stricto siya, kinabukasan hindi. Ngayon, pinagalitan niya yung bata kasi tumayo. Kinabukasan, pwede niya lang patayuin yung mga bata kahit anong gawin, hindi siya magagalit. Yung mga ganung bagay. We have to be consistent with our classroom management behaviors. Okay, so if we are like this on the first day, we must maintain that kind of behavior to our students. Any more? So, ulit sabi niya, can a problem be an objective or can an objective be a problem? No. Hindi. Okay, problems and objectives are entirely different things. Okay, an objective is something that your learners has to accomplish for a particular day, while a problem is something you have thought of related to your lesson. Say if your lesson is about parts of the cell, then you can think about stem cell therapy. Okay, you can think about yung ang tawag nito, yung kahumalingan ng mga matatanda o mga mayayaman na magpa-stem cell therapy? And will that give them information about the cell? Of course, because it's about stem cell therapy. Mga ganung bagay. So yun yung pagkakaiba ng objective sa problem. Objective is very specific. Anong gagawin ng bata for that particular day? Problem is something related to the lesson. Okay? Problem is something related to the lesson. Merrill's first principle may be applied to higher learner to basic ed learners at a very shallow application. Most of the time, problem-based learning na-apply yan sa graduate school o sa college learners. So for you, sir, what is the best practice model, or is it will depend on the subject matter? It depends on two things. It depends on the subject matter, and it depends on the type of learners you have. Yun. It depends on the subject matter, and it depends on the type of learners you have. So, halimbawa, can problem-based learning work on mathematics? Say, for example, ang learners mo ay first year high school or grade 7. Tapos tinuturuan mo sila ng basic algebra. Will Merrill's first principle design works on that particular situation? I think it does not. One thing, grade 7 learners cannot learn on their own. Second, grade 7 learners or algebra is an extremely difficult subject for grade 7 learners to learn on their own. Okay? So, yun. It can depend on two things. Yung subject matter mo at yung maturity ng learners mo. Now, environmental science ang subject mo. Ang topic mo ay water pollution. Okay? My learners are grade 10 learners. Siguro, can they learn water pollution by presenting a problem to them? Halimbawa, yung Dolomite Beach. So they will search something about Dolomite Beach in Manila. Was it beneficial or not beneficial? Is it beneficial or not beneficial? So they will learn something about water pollution there. So you're presenting a problem that is indirectly touching about water pollution. So will they learn something about water pollution? They will learn through a problem that you have presented. So yun, okay? So the best is the generic. Kung ako tatanungin, no, ano yung best? Yung generic. The Gagne's 9 events is the generic model of instructional design. Okay? It can work in all learners, but it might be boring to some learners. But it can be applied to all types of learners. Yung Gagne's 9 events. Yung kay Merrill kasi very high yan. Problem-based learning. So can you remember, si Mas, ang daming can you remember, sir, your first day of teaching? I can. Ano to, yung formal teaching o nung practice teaching?
Formal, sir. Formal.
Formal. I taught first at medical colleges of Northern Philippines. MCNP ang first teaching. Formal teaching experience ko. And college na kasi yung mga yun. College na. So, anong ginamit kong model? Well, I use the problem-based model. So, sabi ko sa kanila, nagpakuha ako ng papel. Okay? Sabi ko, you get 1/4 sheet of paper, and then you write something on that paper that you wanted to say to someone. Sabi ko ganun. Wanted to say to someone. Halimbawa, crush kita, ganun. Or mahal kita, mga ganun bagay. So now, crumple that paper in like a ball, and then throw them at any direction. So, siyempre, they all throw the papers, and then, so yung mga bata, siyempre, excited na makita kung ano yung sinulat ng mga kaklase nila. So now, can you please read the writings on the paper? So they all read, and they laugh, and then they were very curious kung sino yung nagsulat ng mga yun. But the question I throw to them is not about what they wrote on the paper, but I asked them, what is the motion of the crumpled paper when you threw it? Ano yung direction ng motion niya? Because my topic before was projectile motion. Okay, the topic before was projectile motion. So I in one way, I presented to them an activity that will present to them what the topic will be. So yun yung aking first formal teaching experience. You know, in my teaching, except sa inyo, I am more of a practical and gusto ko yung mga bata ang mag-explore, okay, nung gagawin nila. It will not be me who will teach them what they want. They will learn from the class. Lalo na sa college. Pero sa inyo kasi, alam nyo ang aking perspective sa inyo, you will be taking the licensure exam eh. So ang kailangan nyo ay teorya. Ang kailangan nyo ay impormasyon para makapasa sa licensure exam. Yun. 'Di ba? Tama ba ako? Kaya
Yes.
madalas sa akin, lectures, okay? Tapos 2 weeks lang tayo mag-demo and then lectures ulit. Kasi yun yung kailangan nyo sa licensure exam. Okay? Yung mga yan. So, depende ulit. Sabi ko nga, it depends on the learner, kung sino yung learners mo, at kung ano yung lesson. Na ganun bagay. Kaya kung nagtatanong kayo sa ibang mga blocks ninyo na edtech din ng klase, yung iba kasi sila, gumagawa sila ng mga IMs na and all. But at the back of my mind, sige, let's do it. Pero kasi ang mas importanteng magawa nyo sa klase natin is yung mga gagamitin nyo para makapasa sa licensure exam.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Any more question?
None for me.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, can I ask everybody to please open their cameras for documentation? So next meeting, we will be asynchronous. So I'll be sending to you a lecture video about lesson planning at yun yung gagawin nyo. So I'm just giving you a head start ha. Be creative in your teaching demonstration. A good teacher is a very creative teacher. Kayo mismo ang mag-iisip kung paano nyo ituturo ang isang bagay. Okay? So it will be your own discretion. So can I ask everyone to please open their cameras? May mga hindi pa naka-open. I hope you guys learned something for today. Okay, smile to the camera. 3, 2, 1, smile. One more, 3, 2, 1, smile. All right, so goodbye everyone. Please posted sa GC natin for further instructions. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, thank you.